Welcome to The Naked Truth. I've decided to call this The Naked Truth because at the end of the day, what we're doing here is we are providing with information around the truth, the absolute bare and exposed truth around what it is to be a human being. And we do that through sharing our stories, through, here she is, through sharing. So I'm just adding her on now. Yay!
Yay! Hello.
So for those of you who I've literally just jumped on and I'm sitting at the airport, so I've literally just gone like last minute, tried to catch up from the traffic. So thank you so much for joining me, my love. Hello.
Hello. Oh, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. It's totally my pleasure. I haven't even got around to introducing you, so I'm gonna let you do that yourself. For everyone, this is the wonderful, the magnificent, the oh my god, totally incredible Steph Doyle from the Soul Echo, and I'm going to let you just tell about yourself and do your thing.
Do my thing. Do my thing. Which is always a stretch sometimes when we have to share ourselves, but it's about really embracing, our truth and our magic. And so I'm Steph. I'm a soul echoist, as I like to call it, passionate about empowering people and connecting them back to their spark and their magic and their truth, and holding that space and taking them on that journey. And that is through my art, through both photography and illustrating, through stories, through connecting, through creating that really sacred space to allow people to drop in and just be unapologetically themselves. And I think, like my passion in that lies from just the expansion and growth I've experienced through allowing myself to do the same. And I just want everyone to embrace themselves and to know that they're okay. And I also, believe through this work, we have the power. We already have everything we need to transform our pain into passion. And that for me stems from the loss of my mum 10 years ago, to suicide and mental health challenges. And to be where I am now is such a blessing, but that's because I've allowed myself to go through the feelings and be in the shit and work through my shit and really own that part of myself, and then from that let it bloom into this beautiful magic that I create in the world.
Absolutely. Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I love all of that you said, and I know that I've experienced that myself with having that journey of pain into passion. It's huge, isn't it? And so I'd really love for you to, like you mentioned about your mum passing away and everything like that, losing your mum to suicide, are you able to kind of go more into depth about, not necessarily about that, but just your whole journey of how it unfolded, and were there any kind of when did it really start and all that kind of stuff?
Excuse me. Yeah, so mum was a single mum. She left an abusive relationship with my father. 2 seconds. I'm just going to
untangle the earphone.
Yeah. God, they were giving me the shits. So mum was a single mum. She left my abusive father, or biological father. And we grew up with we lived with my grandparents, so her parents, my entire life. So my grandparents are two beautiful, wise souls in my life that I'm extremely close to. I mean, I feel so blessed that I got to have, or I get to still have this close relationship with my grandparents. And, a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And even closer than, seeing them every second Sunday. It's like living with them. So we live together, but throughout my childhood, probably when I was 5 or 6, I really noticed, so mum was forever trying to study and improve herself and get into the dream career where she felt settled. And so she studied 4 degrees, which was amazing, like incredible feat for a single parent over, I think
Huge.
it was probably like, 15, 16 years of study
Yeah.
and working throughout that.
Oh
But
my
I would
gosh.
notice that there would be weekends where she'd be locked in her bedroom all weekends, and I wouldn't see her, or I'd go in and she'd just say she was unwell. And that sort of happened on and off. And then probably when I was about 14, 13, 14, 15, 16, that's when she'd have sort of really big sort of angry, fiery flare-ups. And, I would not be an angel. I would make mistakes, tell lies,
Mm.
do sort of little bits and pieces of teenage things. And we would get into these fights, and her sort of rage and anger would be quite intense, never violent or threatening towards me, but just like I was always like, surely me telling that lie doesn't like equate to this sort of level of anger. And then there was more sort of dramatic periods of her withdrawing. And then
Yeah.
I was 17, just finished high school, just got back from schoolies. We had some family who were living overseas come back. So everyone was living in one home. It was fucking crazy. And she had just finished a contract working at QUT, and I had a boyfriend at the time. She could see me sort of leaving the nest, not needing her. This job didn't work out after a 4th degree, and she went into an episode of mania, and she went missing for about 6 hours.
Wow.
And we ended up finding her. She was at like a neighbour's house, and then she was admitted into hospital. So that was just after Christmas in 2008. And then she passed away in May. So it was about 6 months where she was in hospital for probably 3. And then, and that involved me being, 17, going to the psychiatric ward of a hospital every day to visit her, and the confronting energy that is in that space, and seeing your mum, seeing, your person, your strong, your safety in a space where you then become the parent, where you're nurturing her. She then came home, and that was a struggle for me and my grandparents. We didn't know what we were meant to do. There was no support. I didn't know how to act. Like, I was so angry at her, and I just like couldn't forgive her. And I was like, we've had years of this shit, and I've always forgiven you, but like I can't right now. And a couple months later, I went away for a weekend, and I remember the Thursday night she came into my room she wanted to apologize to me. And I was just like, fuck, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm going away for the weekend. I'll talk to you later, kind of thing. And she was like, no, like, I really want to apologize. Like, I'll give you a hug now because I don't think I'll see you in the morning. And I'm like, okay, sure. Get up in the morning, and she, like, I'm walking out. I'm about to go to the car where my friends are picking me up. And she walks out, and she's like, oh, like, just give me a hug. Like, I just, like, have a good weekend. And
This is really.
I was like,
Steph.
yeah, sure. Like, don't make me look like a loser, Mum. Like, gave her a hug, and she's like, I love you. And I was like, oh, I love you too. And then I went, and then it was the Saturday morning where she decided that the pain was too much for her. And very interestingly, I'm like quite intuitive and quite connected to the universe. And I think Mum and I have done many lives together. We've had many times in our journey. I think we are soulmates. She always used to tell me that from a young age, and I feel that so deeply. But I think it's interesting. Like, I always had this feeling. I remember this feeling I had when I was 16. I was like, she's not going to be in my life forever. And I remember thinking, fuck, you can't think those things. Wow. But it was just like a feeling. So that Friday night, I had this insane dream where she passed away. And the next morning I woke up, and I dream very vividly. So it's not unusual for me to have like intense dreams. And the Saturday morning I woke up, and I just had this feeling. I was like, something's fucking off in my life today. Like, something's not right. And then, I found out later that afternoon that she had passed away. So that is the story of that. And it was such a, like, there was definitely signs over the years, but we weren't empowered. Like if I was in that position now, witnessing someone withdrawing every couple of weekends and stuff, like I would be so much more empowered with what I know now to be able to help them. But back then, mental health wasn't talked about. And even when she was in hospital, I told one of my friends. And so when she passed away, everyone's like, what the fuck has been going on? Like, and then, you know, I realized, like, if it was cancer or another disease or anything else, I would have told everyone. And I wouldn't have felt, you know, suffocated by this stigma, because I was like, she's going to get better, and I don't want people to think she's crazy.
Yeah. So can I ask you, by the way, my heart, babes, I didn't even know this. Like, I'm so grateful that you shared this with us. So thank you so much. God, I love you. I love you too.
I love you too. I love you so much. I just feel the safety in being here with you, you know. That's the space you hold.
And you know, there's people dropping in comments saying, "Yes, it's just so amazing. Thank you for sharing." And I completely agree. I totally you are absolutely incredible. And first and foremost, at such a young age, to have to go through something like that, I could never imagine what that would be like. And I think unless you go through something like that, you also have no idea. So I think it's so brave that you're able to share this and speak about this so openly, because I also believe that there are so many people who go through stuff like this that don't know what to do with it or who to turn to. And then that kind of perpetuates and recreates, I guess, a cycle that is very, very similar in their family lines. And so I want to ask you then, you mentioned about how if it was, you know, cancer or something like that, then you would talk about it. Why do you think we have this, why do you think it's so easy for us to talk about those things rather than, you know, mental health or any of those things? Because I know when I was diagnosed with depression, immediately the thought that came into my head was, this is shameful. There was so much shame around it, and I couldn't talk about it. So why do you think that is the case? And do you think it's changing, or it has changed since then?
I think it's a case of when we cannot see the illness, we can't see the sickness, you know, you can't see the broken bone, people don't understand. And I think the interesting thing is, for me, I've never suffered firsthand from any mental health challenges. But at the same time, I have experienced, you know, what I would say is circumstantial depression in really dark places after mum passed away. I think we've all experienced anxiety from, you know, presenting something on stage or being nervous about a job interview. Like we have an understanding of it. I think in the more complex cases of, you know, severe depression or bipolar or schizophrenia or anything else, I think we find it really hard to comprehend what that feels like. And even now when I talk to people about, you know, having conversations and leaning in for people who are, you know, experiencing certain challenges, they struggle because they don't understand it. But the interesting thing is, I don't understand what cancer's like because I've never had it. Yeah. But I think because it's a visual thing and I can see that, and they're going to hospital and it's this treatment and it's just their body, it's not their mind. And I think you're right, there is so much shame around our internal mental workings that it keeps us silent. And then that shame, you know, ultimately shame can't exist if you're speaking the truth and you're sharing the stories. So yeah, I think it's a lack of probably like stereotypes from, you know, decades ago of, you know, women being crazy and being locked up because they're nuts. And that's just not how it is. And we're stuck in that condition or that pattern that, anyone with a mental health challenge that they're facing is crazy.
Yeah. And one of the big things I just took from that, and by the way, guys, if you're watching this and you have experienced something similar, or if you are experiencing something like this, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Tell us your experience around this, because it's something that I really am so passionate about talking about as well. And this is something that I base my whole work on as well. And one of the big things that I really just dropped and landed for me as you were talking is almost like we identify ourselves with who we are up here. It's almost like this is us. But it's so easy to blame things on. So if there's something wrong with here, then there's something wrong with us. But if there's something wrong with here, because we've become disconnected from our body, then we blame our body. It's not us.
Fucking boom. Yeah.
Like, because we're so disembodied and we're so disconnected from our bodies. So if it's up here, then it means it's almost like something is actually wrong with us as a person and who we be and who we are in this world. And it's almost like it almost showcases, who we are as a person. So therefore, if I tell you about my depression or if I tell you about my anxiety or whatever, it's almost like a knife straight to the heart of who I be, you know. Whereas if it's my body, then I can easily blame my body because I'm not my body, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
And I think too, I think on that, which is so fucking powerful, I think people have this expectation and assumption that the body will heal. Whereas it's like people think this is like a permanent situation, that healing's not possible.
Yes, totally. So with that, Bex just said, people who are the masters of our destiny are not victims of their pasts. Yes. Yes, definitely.
That's so powerful.
And so with that, Steph, how did that impact and unravel your whole journey from there on? Because losing your mum at such a young age, and especially around the circumstances that it happened, like I couldn't even imagine. I could not even imagine, couldn't even come close of what all that would feel like. And especially when you're also, you know, dealing with so many other things, going through, like, you're changing as a person. You haven't even come into this space. Like how?
I think to lose a parent at any age is tough. I did read a book. It's titled Motherless Daughters, which is, I've never finished it because it's as intense as it sounds, but it's a collection of stories from women who have lost their parents. And the author lost her mum, and she sort of narrates through it. And I remember reading this one part, and she said, there's no easy age to lose a parent, and there's no easy circumstance, but murder and suicide are the toughest because there's something else going on that's really hard for us to mentally understand. And when you're at that late teen stage, you're leaving the nest. And so when you're leaving the nest, you'll circle back in a couple of years to come back and be like, I'm ready to be close with my mum or connected to my dad, or whatever it might look like for you. So I remember I had like years of counselling, and I'm just such an advocate for therapy, psychology, whatever it is that works for people, getting third-party support. And one day, one of my sessions, she's like, there's really no other word for it, but it's fucked. And I was like, yeah, it is fucked. But I'm still in awe of myself, because the night that Mum passed away, I said two things. I said, if you feel all there is to feel, you'll be okay. And if my story can help change the life of one other person in this world, then you've been truly successful, and this has been, for lack of better words, worth it. And that just, I don't know how that just wisdom dropped in that moment, but it did. And it's what it's been my life raft of what I've come to this whole journey. And, you know, years of counselling, I truly, like, I remember my counsellor, I saw her probably 6 months afterwards, and we had a couple of years together. And she's like, it's really not until the 3 to 5 year mark that you'll start to feel like you're actually okay. And it really is riding the waves of grief. And the waves are every fucking minute, to every hour, to every 2 hours, to, you know, like all through the hours, to like every day, once a day, second day, third day, fourth day, once a week, once every 2 weeks, like literally riding that out for years. And then I remember yeah, I remember it got to the point where it was like a couple of times a year, and it's just like you wake up on a random day. Sometimes it's like a special occasion. Most of the time it was like a random Tuesday. You'd wake up and it's just like someone's just like drops like tons of weight on your body, and it's just the grief that you've got to sit in and process, and it's dark and you just cry, and your heart physically breaks. So I think for me, just actually being in it on those days.
Yeah.
And it's so intense at first, you can't do anything but be in it. And yeah, it's fucking terrifying because you're like, I am in the darkest space ever. And in a way, as time went on, you knew the signs. I knew that, I might drop something and then just fucking bawl my eyes out. And I know that I've got something there to process. And then I'd be in that space. And it almost got harder because you'd be like, I'm doing so well and life's actually so beautiful and all these beautiful things are starting to happen. And then you have a day where you're like in the shit again. And you're like, oh God, is this going to last 6 months again? Can I get out of it? And it's like literally like you climb out of the fucking deepest, darkest hole and then you're good for a little while. And then someone like kicks you back in there and you're like, oh fuck, we're doing this again. But I honestly, that is the only way through it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I guess that's been a huge catalyst, like you said before, for your work. And with, the Soul Echo that you now have beautifully curated and put out into the world, how does that link into that whole experience and you navigating that along the way? How did that get there for you?
I felt like, so Mum was, she would have been a professional photographer if she could have made that happen. But she was a hobbyist, a very passionate hobbyist photographer. So quite often, I have so many memories of going out and taking photos with her and hanging out together. And she was also a creative writer as well. So she did some poetry and wrote some short stories. And it almost felt like after she passed away, it was like, I got to take photos and I've got to start writing. And I've always loved photos, so that wasn't a shock to me. But the writing, I've never really been passionate about writing. Anyway, a few years passed. I did buy a DSLR camera, had a bit of a play around with that for a while. And then I started to do some work, but I was young and naive, and a few situations that didn't sit right with me with the people that I photographed. And I ended up just thinking, I had some negative people in my life who were like, you will never be a photographer. That was my charming ex-boyfriend. So I also navigated an abusive relationship throughout the grief process. And I just put the camera down. I was like, yeah, close that door forever, shut it down. It was like after that moment, my brain and soul were like, you need to write a blog. You need to start a blog. You need to start a blog. Da, da, da. So I listened to that every day for 3 years. I was thinking about it. I talked to some people, really keen. And then it was 2015 and I was like, oh, fuck, shut up, stop nagging me. Let's fucking do it then. All right. And then I sat down and brainstormed a list of names, what am I going to call it? And the Soul Echo just was in that list. And I was reading the list out to my partner, and I'm like, my now partner, who's a dreamboat. And I was like, I said the Soul Echo and he's like, that's the one. And I was like, you think so? He's like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. It just, the
felt
soul,
so good.
It just felt so good. And I feel like the Soul Echo has grown me, but I've grown her. It's a very reciprocal relationship. Which you might be like, well, so yeah, she's growing you because you're growing it. But yeah, it's definitely been cyclic. She's called me forward to do this work. And it's, I do believe it's that divine energy that's come through to me, that this is how I need to show up in the world, and this is my work, this is where I want to be. And I could never ever define a job title when I was in the corporate world and looking to progress. Could never even articulate what I wanted to do in the world. And this is it. Now I've sort of created it and I've found it. But it started as a blog, and then I was conscious of the content I was creating and not using other artists' work. And so I picked up the camera again. And here we are. I'm now a professional photographer who does a myriad of other creative things as well.
It's
but
freaking amazing.
Thank you. And it's such a beautiful feeling, but it's really, you know, for me, it's Mum's legacy that drives me. It's to create a life that is so delicious and exciting and joyful, because even when you're in the midst of grief and you're going through trauma and you're trying to fucking figure out shit, we still have access to joy, and we still deserve joy, and we still are worthy of feeling happy. And I think particularly our loved ones, you know, it does sound cliche, but Mum wouldn't want me to be a sad sack of shit on the couch, living a boring existence. Like, I am my mother's daughter, like eccentric and crazy and loud laugh and all of the bits and pieces that I am now. Like, I am the living version of her. But yeah, she drives me, and I know this was her dream, and I get to create this in the world. And I think the power of social media, you know, having this space right here with you, and even just Instagram, that's when I really started talking about my experience and my journey. And it's in those moments of extreme vulnerability that people relate and they respond, and you create that space of healing for them, and you give them permission to go there.
So let's talk about that then. Let's talk about vulnerabilities and imperfections, because one of the things that you mentioned that you really, would love to jam on is imperfections. So how does that connect in with, because obviously, you know, you've experienced your mum going through mental health. How does the imperfection side and the vulnerability side and owning those connect into all that you've experienced, or how have you learned that that's actually a thing? How did that come to be?
I definitely
Or what do you believe around that as well?
Yeah. You know, my belief, when we strip away the conditioning and the shit that we're fed throughout our life, there is, you know, we really, like, we're striving for something that doesn't exist. And I use the word perfect a lot, not in a way of like a goal or where I want to be, but I just don't believe in that word. And, you know, I really do believe we're perfectly imperfect. But I think it's not even about being imperfect. It's about celebrating our uniqueness. You know, no one is the same. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we're all so different. And yet we're fed this like cookie cutter fucking idea that we're meant to like look a certain way. We're meant to have big perky boobs, a nice round ass. We're meant to be like really emotionally stable, not too out there, play it really safe, get a good job, climb the ladder, get married, have kids, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what if I fucking don't want to do that? And you know, for me, I think it's really about connecting into, you know, what's on your heart. What does your soul want to do? And finding a way to connect to yourself. And that can take time, and it's an evolution, and it's not a destination as well. It's a constant. And I think, you know, I think the sad thing is that we don't always give ourselves enough time or space to adapt or allow ourselves to change. Like, my idea when I was 17 was I would be, you know, married with 2 kids at 23. Oh, that's not me now. And I'm so glad. So, like, allowing ourselves that space to, you know, I wanted to create a successful blog, but it's actually evolved into something else, and giving ourselves the space to accept that. But I think the vulnerability in that is that unapologetic ownership of what's on our heart and soul, and breaking out of that cookie cutter, which can be scary. And when you're in a circle of people who don't support that, and, you know, I'm so extremely blessed to be, you know, connected to you, connected to so many outrageous humans who just give me that space to be me, and, you know, same for me in return. But yeah, I was in a shit circle of people years ago who told me I'd never be a photographer, I'd never be anything. And it's scary, because when you are vulnerable emotionally, like I was, you take that on board. You think that's the fucking truth, and it's not. There is more out there. And, you know, people then, you know, like, I have conversations with people now, and they're like, oh, it's all good and well for you. You're self-employed, like, da da da. I'm like, you can actually, I don't believe there's limits. You can do anything. And I
Yeah.
remember having this thought. I was like, I reckon you can do anything. I was actually having this conversation with Tom, and I was like, although, like, I don't think I could be Usain Bolt. And I was like, no, actually, I could. I could if I really fucking wanted it, and I really wanted to train, and I wanted to be Usain Bolt or like a version of him. I could fucking do it, but I don't want to do
Yes.
it, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
But
it's not a priority.
it's not a priority. But I think, you know, we do get very sucked into like instantaneous beliefs as well, that this shit will happen quickly, and I'm fucking guilty as charged with that as well now in my journey. But anything is possible. But it's fucking vulnerable to step up and claim that power that's within us.
Yes. And I want to say hello to everyone who's just jumped on. Jessa, Chris, Krishla, Miranda. Miranda actually said, visually you can make art, but this art is not always perfect. Artists make the decision that sometimes focus on a fault. Call it a fault line that is a vibration / boom, but get on and make the art. Yes. Hello, Alison. Yeah. I think, I mean, I totally resonate with everything that you're saying. And I think that's such a great message, is we can become so consumed by the ceiling that we have always told is there. You know, we've been told that, like, it would be like being inside of a house and going, oh, that's the sky, it's the roof. And really, like, there's something above it. We just don't see it, right? One of the things that comes up and that I've just recently experienced in relation to this is, like, I just spent a couple of days with my parents, and one of them is always like watching these amazing documentaries and TV shows, and constantly I hear him going, my dad going all the time, like, oh, aren't humans amazing? Oh, like, human beings, like the things that certain humans can do. I'm like, Dad, you can do that. If you can do that. And he's like, oh no, basically, like, I didn't get that gene, or I didn't get that. And I'm like, oh man, like, you just have to choose. And it's that, isn't it? Like, you just have to choose. But you're right, like, the vulnerability is, by the sounds of it and what you're saying and what I've experienced as well, is like, it's so, you realize that you actually have to be very vulnerable along the way, because that's where your courage lies. Like, that's where your strength lies in getting through, is like being able to slowly uncover pieces and pieces of yourself, to be more and more vulnerable, to realize that, like, that's where you want to be and that's what you want to do. And I love that, you know, you can do anything. We literally can do anything. But it's huge. We just have to decide to do it. Hey.
Yeah, and you know, I think when you are deciding to do it, it's vulnerable because you're putting yourself out there. And if you're really following your heart and your soul, you're putting like the innermost workings of yourself out into the world. And you know, I remember the night I launched my blog, and I had a couple of posts on there that were like extremely deep shit about my experience and my journey. And it's like, hand you the world like a platter of yourself, and you're like, oh God, what's going to happen? And you know, what I want to say to anyone out there is that if people react negatively, or when they do, that's just like you triggering them is just a projection of their own desire to do the same.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
And that can be tough to fucking remember when you're like in the arena, like copying shit and getting your ass handed to you. But honestly, it is not about you. And what a gift that you could show someone the way.
Yeah. But we almost haven't been conditioned to see it in that way. Hey, we've automatically been conditioned to take things personally, or to kind of go, oh, you've changed. I don't like being around you anymore, or you're not the person who you used to be anymore. I don't need to choose to be around you, or like, basically they want to change you back into how you used to be with them, because it makes them uncomfortable for them.
Yep. People put you into a box. They go, oh, Steph belongs here. Cool. Corporate Steph belongs here. Amazing. Oh, corporate Steph's gone rogue. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Get back here.
Yes, totally. So what are some of the things that have helped you along the way kind of um, stay true to you and be able to do your thing? Just before you answer that, Alison's just said, I remember being drawn and an artist drew the loose skin on my stomach, which was interesting because I thought it was ugly. And she said, are you kidding? It's so beautiful. It tells a story.
Oh,
yeah, amazing.
Can I just share on that?
So beautiful.
Photographing people
please.
is a vulnerable experience for them. And I truly believe photography is an experience. And I think that, you know, if I'm asked a technical question, what differs me to the rest is that I believe it's an experience. To truly capture someone's soul, you need to have that safe space where they can trust you and they can, like, you see people open up to you and it's so beautiful. But I hear that because people are like, oh, can you do this, and can you do this, and can you do that? And I'm like, this is your person. Like, this isn't about, but this isn't about you as a person. This is your fucking soul that comes out of your eyes and in your expression and in the moments of joy when you're just laughing with me and we're dancing, we're playing and you're free. Fucking who cares about your thighs or your stomach? Like, it is a beautiful divine expression of you and the journey that you've been on, and the scars and the bumps and the lumps. It's all irrelevant because it's what's in here.
Yeah. And can I ask, as a photographer, when you're photographing people, in that way, are you looking at them and judge? Well, I mean, I know your answer to this, but, like, you know, are you looking from that perspective of, like, oh, how can I hide this, or how can I make this look thinner, or what's your viewpoint?
It's always about, it's just about them. It's like, if anything, I'm looking, and quite often in all of my sessions, I say I do get this, like, weird stare where I'm also framing things in the scene as well, depending what we're wanting to capture. But sometimes I'm looking straight, not through them, but, like, into them. And, like, what do I need? Like, where do I need to take you to capture you? I'm never, like, oh, people are just so fucking beautiful. And it, like, every time I send my gallery to people, I'm just like, I hope you see, because there's certain traits about certain people that I want them to just really know. And I'm always like, I hope you feel and see that powerful, strong, intelligent woman, or that divine, feminine goddess that's within you. Because, like, people are so fucking beautiful, and we're so caught up about the cellulite and the color of our skin, or the bumps or the scars and the other shit that, like, actually doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And I just never see that. Of course, there are angles that don't suit people, like if I'm laying on the ground and shooting upwards. No one looks, like, fabulous from that point of view. So it is a dance of making people feel good and understanding, like, is there self-consciousness from, you know, does it stem from, like, a societal bullshit thing, or is it, you know, a bit of a trauma that they've experienced that we just really need to gently work with there as well? So it is about understanding that and not just pushing in every situation. But just you just don't see that. Like, when you see a soul, when you go soul to soul, you don't, the rest like disappears.
I just want to share a quick story before I start to ask you some final questions. So a quick story around that. I actually experienced that exact outcome personally myself when I stood on stage in front of over 100 people, stripped off. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, these people are going to be looking at me. They're going to be judging me. And every part of me did not want to go there at all. These people were just sitting on the floor. I was up on stage and they were looking at me. That's the whole arena. And my brain was telling me all these stories of, like, oh my God, they're going to be looking at your thighs. They're going to be looking at your pubic hairs that you haven't shaved. They're going to be looking at all these things. And I got down, and after we took a break, we went outside, and the amount of people that came up to me and congratulated me and said thank you for being so brave, and thank you, like, they just could not praise me enough for being courageous and being brave. And it brought up something within them. Not one person came up to me and was like, oh, I really looked at your body and was like this, or I felt like, you know, you would have been really like everyone was like, oh my God, all I could see was this beautiful soul standing, like your body just disappeared basically, because I was just so in awe of your bravery. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's it. When we do the thing, like it's not, we create the flaws through our own perspectives and our own filters. Other people don't see it. We're with ourselves 24/7, and that's what we choose to see. And so I just like exactly what you said, you know, other people don't have the same viewpoint that we have.
And
so it just
totally. And even like, I want to just share that, you know, I want to be fitter and healthy, and I think that's totally fine to want to feel that energy through your body, and that's something I'm working on. But I was very caught up in my head in my relationship about having sex, and I was like, like he's not going to be attracted to me anymore, like, oh, look at this, like just fully in my head in the mirror. And then when we talk about it, and he's like, babe, like when we're having sex, I'm not that is not on my mind.
I'm just happy to have you in front of me.
I'm just fucking happy to be there. But he's totally. Like, it's, you know, it's more than that. And again, it's like that whole vulnerability, like when someone climaxes and you're holding that space for them to like really just be in that moment. He's like, I'm not looking at your fucking hips when you're like going there. You know, I'm just in this moment of like love, and I'm not looking at your body.
And it's really interesting because a lot of the times the parts of our bodies that we don't like are the parts of our bodies that our partners love, absolutely love. And when we own them, they just like sends them totally in a different space. All right. So is there anything that I'm just going to ask you a final few questions before we start to close out. So is there anything that you feel is really true on your heart that people maybe don't talk to you or ask you enough about that you really want to speak into?
I actually think more of a conversation for me around mental health is where I want to be playing. And
amazing.
You know, having this conversation today, I haven't even thought about what I'm going to say. It's just come out of me. And you know, I feel like opening up this really vulnerable space of talking about my journey and what I experienced is a big part of where I want to be playing and what I want to be doing, with the goal of like just giving other people permission and that safety that it's okay and that they'll be okay and they've got themselves, and it will, they can, like there is more beyond that grief for sure. And I think, you know, and I think definitely self-love, and maybe not how we commercialize it now in terms of bath bombs and stuff, which is totally fine also, but self-love is true, like truly connecting to yourself and nurturing yourself. And I think the two are very interlinked. But I would love to talk more, I guess, on mental health and that even just that grief side. And I do think I've shied away from some mental health stuff because I don't feel like, because I don't experience it firsthand, perhaps I'm not the right person to be talking about it. But then when you look at the stats, it's like 1 in 4 people will be affected by mental health. And so you look at the people then around them who are supporting them through it as well.
So can I drop in on something like that then? Let's just have a quick little, you know, maybe like, well, however long it goes for, but a quick jam on that, because I've been through mental health. You've been on the other side. So as someone who has been through the other side, what I want to do with this quick little thing is just get your perspective and what you would tell people who are experiencing people who have mental health or in their lives. Does that make sense? So people who have been through your case. And I'll do a little drop in of what advice I would give to people who are actually going through it, because I think that's what a perfect combination, right? Of having this here. So yeah, what would you tell to people who, you know, maybe have people close to them, family members or whatever in their life who they maybe feel are going through mental health, but don't know what to do or don't know how to handle it?
I think the first thing is don't overcomplicate it. Don't even think about it. How much do you love this person? What does your heart feel for them? What does your soul feel for them? Where is the love that you can express to them? Because I truly believe like conversation, community and connection is such a powerful tool in
Mm.
in healing through this for both sides. And I think really for us as the supporters and the lovers of these people, the nurturers, it's just give them that safe space. You actually do not have to say anything from my experience, but like hold their hands, give them a hug, just lean into them.
Yes. So as someone who has experienced mental illness myself, and I was diagnosed with severe depression back in 2012. And I think it's a common thing, depression, for people to go through. Like you were saying before, I think we've all to some degree experienced depression and anxiety, whether it's had a label, whether it hasn't. And the thing that really, really helped me through at the time was having someone there to, like, I had my best friend there who, she just loved me. She loved me by asking me if there was anything that she could do for me. She loved me by just sitting on the couch next to me, not even having to say a word. She loved me by letting me know that she was there the whole time. She just loved me by letting me know that she was there for me, and, you know, always considering me and always thinking of me. And so I guess what I would say to someone who is going through something like that, because I know that it can be easy to isolate and separate and alienate. And I think that's one of the hardest things to combat, is when we're actually in that mindset. There have been many moments where I personally have felt like opting out as well. And the biggest and hardest yet most beneficial thing that we can do is actually reach out for help, is actually write a letter, is actually contact someone who maybe we don't even feel, you know, like contacting, but who we know would be there for us straight away, and just saying, hey, can you come have a coffee with me? Or, hey, can you listen to me? Or, hey, can you come, whatever, I'm really struggling today, I just need to see someone. And being able to talk to someone about all this stuff, and being around people who you can be openly vulnerable with. And because what happens with this that I've experienced is we get so much up in our head that we feel like other people aren't experiencing it. And then we judge ourselves and judge ourselves and judge ourselves. And that's when it gets to the point where we're just like, the world, like, I literally feel so heavy in my body, in myself, in my life, that I could not imagine, like, it's just easier for me to opt out than it is for me to stay here right now. And I have been there many, many times. And I want to say that, like, speaking openly and honestly about this is not only going to help yourself during those times, but also it's going to share and spread light on potentially helping other people who are going through the same thing. Because I mean, you say that you haven't experienced a mental illness, but, like, at what stage does it have to get to for it to be labeled as a mental illness? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
I believe that, you know, some people experience this stuff but just don't go to doctors about it to get diagnosed. So as humans, I guess there's a fine line. And, you know, I guess for me, it's just about having someone there who you can speak to about all this stuff and ask for help. And that's the biggest and best thing that you can actually do. And also getting outside in nature. If you don't feel like you can, ask for help, then the biggest thing that is the step towards asking for help is, I used to go and lie on the beach in the sunshine, which vitamin D is a combat for depression, but lying on the beach in the sunshine, and eventually your energies start to recalibrate and neutralize to a degree that you can then go and talk to someone or reach out to someone where you feel semi-unionized within that. So I think that's, I love that.
I agree with you that like what you're saying I can relate to, because I've never been in my grief, and like all I sometimes didn't want to talk about it. Sometimes I just want to talk about other shit and like treat me normally. Like I'm still a normal human. Like you don't have to like walk on eggshells around me, you know. And like fuck, if you do and I like explode, then we'll deal with that. But it's like I think like I just had this image when you were talking. It's about both parties leaning in. It's about people who are there to support and there with people through those times to lean in. And it's about, you know, other people seeing that opportunity and also leaning in and knowing that they're safe.
Yes. And I totally agree with that. And one of the other things that I want to say on that as well is like, the other perspective I have on this is mental illness is also, I believe, just a label. At the end of the day, it's I'm struggling. The other person goes, I have been struggling as well. I have struggled in the past. Me too. For someone to be like, me too, or be, I understand. I get it. Fuck that shit.
And I think when we speak about our experiences, we obviously liberate ourselves from the shame. But yeah, quite often people are like, me too, or I need to hear that, or my friends actually, like my one and only friend that I told her mum was unwell, we went through a heap of stuff with my brother. And I was like, oh God, it's not just me then? Like I'm not the only person ever to go through this? Oh, fuck.
Totally. Absolutely. Yes. And I really believe that's what it comes down to, is like knowing that we're actually not separate, knowing that we're not alone, because the whole thing is about like we've created ourselves to become alone and lonely and separate. And for someone to be there and go, me too, or I get it, or yeah, we had that in the past.
Yeah.
It makes you go, oh, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, insane.
Yeah.
Because we all struggle as human beings with this stuff. Amen, sister. Amen. Yes. Oh. Well, normally at the end I ask if there's anything that is feeling quite vulnerable, and I feel like we've really deep dived today with everything. If there's anything that you want to share that's feeling very vulnerable for you, then happy to share it, or that's happening right now that's feeling very real for you right now. If not, that's fine as well.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel like it's on the depths of what we've explored today, but
yeah,
I just think it's important, you know, what I'm conscious of in this journey and the work that I'm doing now is, you know, I really want people to feel the ability to transcend dark into light. And I want to be that sort of embodiment of that. But it's not to say I don't have dark days and I don't challenge and like I don't feel challenged. Like even last night I was super fucking tired and I was like, oh, everything I'm doing is shit, blah, 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 all in my head. And I was like, oh girl, you just need to like go to bed, hey, and get some rest. So I just, you know, like sometimes people will say, oh, you're so positive and stuff all the time, like how, and I'm like, well, truth is I'm not. And I'm trying now more to share those moments of when I'm, you know, like I'm not always sparkly and sunshine, but I know it's always a choice and a capacity within me. And I will be sparkly again. You've just sometimes got to ride out those emotions. So that's what I'd love to share here.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you touched on that. I've actually had a few people private message me in relation to that topic as well. So I'm perfect. Could not be more aligned. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for joining. What bits and pieces do you have coming up, or do you have like how can people contact you? Do you have any programs or any workshops or any like photography bits and pieces? Like what do you have coming up?
There is some really exciting stuff coming up, but not ready yet. But I will have an exhibition. I'm going to have a month-long exhibition out at Wynnum at a little cafe bar out there for Brizzy or maybe Gold Coast locals. But I'm also wanting to tie in an event because it's Mum's 10 years this year since she passed away. So I've wanted to do an event And I'm now thinking I want my art that's going to be exhibited to be on the topic of mental health, and perhaps photographing people who experience mental health challenges or going through it, and how, just there's something there that's not even worked through yet, but I'm excited to share that. So at the moment I'm offering multiple different photo shoots, just not even photo shoots, just journeys back to home and back to their truth and heart and soul. So
amazing.
People can contact me on Facebook, me, Steph Doyle, or the Soul Echo on Instagram as well. So we'd love to connect, and just like love having chats with people too. Like I love human interaction, conversations, connecting is just my jam. So
yes. And I've popped all your links in the bio so people can go for a little stalky stalk. And as you can tell, Steph's amazing, guys. So, oh my God, she's just, I just love you so much.
And I love you so much.
And I really want to acknowledge you for the bravery and the courage that you've had to step through to get to where you are today, for choosing to be courageous amongst the vulnerability, for choosing you along the way, even though it's been hard and there's been roadblocks and all the things come up, and also to show up and express yourself in the way that you do as this complete embodiment of love and courage. I know I shared with you yesterday, but the way that Steph pours herself into her physical body and expresses that through all that she does, all that she is, and all that she shows up in this world is so nourishing for the 50 trillion cells that we have in our body. It is, I honestly cannot even begin to describe how beautiful it feels to receive you. So thank you for being all of you. I love you so much.
I love you too. And just thank you for holding this space for me today. It's been so beautiful to really journey quite deeply back to my story in a public forum, but with you and your ability and power to hold this space and just to lean in and dance with it and like have a bit of fun with it, and just really like your presence. There's just such a deep connection there. And I knew that from the first moment I saw you. I was like, she fucking sees me. And I just think that is your superpower amongst many, but your ability to witness people. So thank you for igniting something within me today in this moment. Something's just like been sparked.
Yes. Beautiful.
And thank you to everyone who has joined or will join. I'm so grateful, in so much gratitude for you to, witness this conversation and to be with us, but also to just be with yourself.
Yes. And thank you to everyone who's watched this and who's supported and held space for Steph to go there, for this whole conversation to happen. We're so grateful. And if you're watching the replay, we'd love any feedback or let us know. And we'll talk to you all again soon. Yes. Thank you, my love.
Thank you.
I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Have a beautiful day, guys.
Yeah, you too. Mwah.